Hey everyone, welcome to a new live edition on YouTube of the Promised Land podcast, talking about things that are happening at Manchester United. And it's a day where United's pre-season has kicked off. They haven't scored any goals. Obviously, a couple of new players we're seeing for the first time. And the biggest news of the day, actually, is Marcus Rashford actually going to Barcelona. It looks like, well, this has been the deal that we've kind of expected will happen at some point in the window, given he wants it. But for me, I think it's taken me by surprise that it's happening so soon and we're hearing about it so early. I thought this would drag out for a little while. But obviously, the same problems are there in the Man United team. You know, pre-season against Leeds, no goals. Obviously, let's all kind of lose our minds about that. Matheus Cunha's there, but the space in the midfield is there. And, you know, there's just not enough pace in it, as Ruben Amorim's pointing out himself. So that means that the season's over already. You know, it's finished as it is, and we're not getting any money in for Marcus Rashford. He's not being sold. There's no transfer fee. And what the hell are we going to do? Well, I'm going to be talking about that on this episode of the podcast today. It is live on YouTube, like I say. So if you're here, if you're not subscribed yet, please do subscribe. Like the video, please drop comments, get in the live chat and this kind of thing as well. But you can also catch this podcast as well on Apple and Spotify if you would like to do so in audio format. It will be uploaded as audio format just after this show is finished on YouTube, and I can turn the audio around and put it back up. But please get in the comment section. Let me know what you think of the game. Let me know what you think of this Marcus Rashford deal as well, and I will do my best to get to the comments throughout the podcast as well. But I will be talking about the friendly itself. Not a lot to say about it, really, but I think there are some things that we learned today, some things that we saw, and obviously some comments from Amorim as well are quite important to dig into. But the big news of the day really is Marcus Rashford leaving, and obviously Brian Mbeumo is doing his medical, or has been doing his medical today, as well as has already been confirmed. But yeah, plenty going on. It seems like after 6 or 7 weeks of nothing happening, like it's all started to kick off again. You know, United are getting this Mbeumo deal over the line, and now the next day, Marcus Rashford's loan to Barcelona is essentially triggered, and we can probably see that happening next week. And, you know, there needs to be a hell of a lot more done, though. Obviously, we know that. We know that United need a midfielder. United probably need a striker. That's where they're going to be looking next. Goalkeeper, Tom Heaton today, pulling out some saves, because if anything, I think Leeds probably had the better opportunities. They probably tested the keeper a bit more. United hitting the bar at the end. United taking shots on goal and Rasmus Højlund getting in the way of them. We're kind of used to that. That's happening like all the time. We're carrying that into the new season as well, obviously. But look, it's important to say, as much as I've just said to promote this pod, I don't know if anybody has seen that. Has anybody seen that? No, not really. If you kind of like send YouTube links out on social media, on X and this kind of thing, nobody really seems to see them or pick them up. That's in my experience anyway. I did joke about me coming on here to kind of lose my head about all this. Obviously, I'm not going to take that approach today. It's just, what's the point? What is the point, you know? But I'll say hello to some of you guys in the chat as well. Aaron, hello, mate, says, more than a great move for Rashford. Any injury in Barca front line, Marcus is going to earn that first 11 spot permanently. Suvik, hello, mate. Fair play to Rashford. I'm in the minority on this, but I only wish him well. Yes. When I talk about Rashford over the course of this, I think it is important to kind of keep that in mind as well. You only really want to wish that for everybody, Marcus Rashford needs to do well for the sake of his own career, for the sake of Manchester United and them actually getting money for him, and for him and Barcelona to find that kind of mesh as well, so they can move forward together. We need this to happen. I only wish him well. Hope he makes Barcelona exercise the option and we get a chunk of the money in pure PSR profit. Harris says, hopefully this means all the Rashford fanboys and PR who pretend to be Man United fans can go to Barcelona as well. And Aaron again there says, hi Scott, hope you're well. And again, United look below average, but it's the first game. Physicality levels will go up as the season approaches. New signings and existing players getting fitter. And Wazza69 there says, what do you think that is only a loan? I will talk about that over the course of the podcast. So please stick with me. Follow me on social as well at _Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, TikTok, all of those kinds of places. Please subscribe to this podcast channel if you've not done so already. For those of you who may be seeing this new, I did have another YouTube channel, which I had some technical problems with. I launched this channel like last month, and I kind of fallen off. And I want to do more streams like this, but it is it's painful starting a new YouTube channel. So if you would love to, or if you would like to kind of support me and subscribe to this channel so I can rack up those subscribers and those watch minutes as soon as possible, then that would be really, really, really appreciated. But if you would prefer this on audio, Apple, Spotify, all those places, please give 5-star reviews and leave comments, this kind of thing as well. But let's get into the game itself today. Obviously, United putting out two teams in two separate halves, kind of a mix of the players you would expect to be first teamers in the first half and the second half. But obviously, there's a lot of things that United do need to address over the course of the summer. There are different players and personalities and player profiles that need to be acquired over the course of the summer months. And you can see the deficiencies. But, this wasn't really anything to write home about. I think if you are tuning into this, expecting to see miracles and expecting to see differences, what are you really thinking? It's been like a month, 6 weeks since United's last game. And we only have two new players in. I know I said the other day about the players looking fitter, this kind of thing. You don't know what you're going to get out of those players. You don't know really if you're going to see any kind of miraculous changes. And you're not especially going to know in the first game back, in the first 45 minutes or 20 or 30 minutes in the second half. You're just not going to get those answers. But on the face of it, nothing's really changed. I think I'll be talking about Matheus Cunha in a bit and maybe Diego Leon as well. But it's important to know that this change isn't just going to be miraculously appearing from the very first preseason friendly against Leeds. Yes, maybe there are some things that we saw in United's team last season that still remain there. But I think, look, United do need different personnel. They need more physicality. They need to cover space better. And we know that already. And we know the midfield that is probably currently first choice that started this game, Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro. We know that that's probably going to be the midfield he leans on if no other midfielders come in. But we know, and he's essentially said as much after the game, we have a lack of pace in midfield, especially in the middle of the park. It's a rallying cry from Ruben Amorim to the people who are above him saying, get me a central midfielder. We'll talk about that in just a minute as well. But, don't expect miracles. Don't throw... Well, I'm not going to tell people what to do, but it's obviously quite... It happens a lot, doesn't it, in this kind of era of social media where you need to see a reaction, you need instant gratification on everything. It has to change immediately. Yet United's problems in the transfer market, their cash position, all these kinds of things. That, and they've warned that this will take a few years as well. You're just going to have to be patient with this. And what is the point kind of expecting things you're not going to get, especially when you don't see new personnel? Look, on the balance of the game, really, United, I think there were some decent things in there. You could see some of the deficiencies, the midfield deficiencies, obviously. Rasmus Højlund, I've seen some people have made their mind up on him already, and we know that. But United are looking at a new striker. They do want a new midfielder. They are looking at goalkeepers. So all of those kind of positions right through the middle of the team are on the agenda to potentially improve. And I've said myself that I would like to see right through that span of the team. If United do make 3 new signings over the course of the summer, well, I at least think United need to make 3 new signings over the course of the summer. It is at centre forward, it is in central midfield, and it is at goalkeeper as well. If they do go and get a new left wing back or something like that, or they do spot an opportunity at centre back or something like that, then great. But I think at minimum before the transfer window closes, I think we really need to see those 3 positions right through the middle of the pitch really strengthened. And United need to find a way to release money and create that kind of bit of leverage so they can go and sign those players. But obviously, we know that United's position in the market has been a little bit difficult to operate in. And this is not the fault of the people who are in charge of the transfers at the moment. They've been dealt a really difficult hand with mistakes that United have made over the course of the past few years in the transfer market. They're trying to offload players. Marcus Rashford is probably the first one of those who's going to be offloaded. And we'll see what happens now. We'll see who United move on to. But simply put, I don't think was anybody really expecting United to go and sign 4, 5, 6 players before the first preseason game. No, I don't think so. So don't expect instant miracles with very few changes. But look, in terms of changes that have been made, Matheus Cunha did make his debut, and it was good to see him in there. Just in general, I think a couple of things that stood out to me. First touch, excellent. It's just nice to see that a player in that position has the kind of ability to take down passes, or like if balls are fizzed into him, he can get the ball and take it on the turn like instantly, or drive through a gap straight away, because he has that ability to control the ball with his first touch. So often you see, and look, I am clutching at straws here, and I am like appreciating certain things that are, should be givens at this level of football. But, his first touch stood out to me. I think it's good to see that ball should stick going in there if that ball is going to be fired into him a lot more. So it gets United up the pitch. His acceleration, there was one moment in the first half, I think it would be the first half because that's all he played. There was a moment where he took the ball and had two Leeds players either side of him, and just acceleration straight off the spot, jump through the gap, and that kind of thing can make a difference to transitioning and making sure that attacks are actually built on with speed. That was good to see. And obviously, he can carry the ball. He carries a threat. There was a nice flick for, I think, Cheeto to get a shot away. Cheeto took one of the opportunities off of Cunha with a left-footed shot, which probably should have been left for Cunha in the first half as well. I think overall, look, you're not going to expect miracles out of this first game for Matheus Cunha, but at the same time, I think it's good to see him in that shirt. Ruben Amorim said on him, we watched that during the last season in a difficult team, so we expect the same thing. Of course, you can see the connection between him and Bruno is still not there, but it's going to be a good connection. I think it was just... It's good to get him integrated. At least United do have one first-team player integrated straight away. So that's an important thing. And obviously, Brian Mbeumo is going to be added to that as well over the course of the next few days. You'd expect that he'll be announced on Monday with all of the medical stuff and club media and this kind of thing that he's going to be doing over the course of Saturday and Sunday this week. So it's good to see that Cunha's been included in the game for the first time. We will see him lock down that left 10 role, and we'll see Mbeumo lock down that right 10 role as a matter of urgency and as soon as possible, I would think. But look, there are glaring issues, and I think I did want to talk about this specific thing that Ruben Amorim did say, because look, we all noticed it. Bruno and Casemiro, I've said myself on the pod over the past few weeks, Bruno and Casemiro playing as that midfield two does not really convince anybody. Doesn't convince anybody. And I myself have kind of my own doubts about whether Bruno Fernandes can become a central midfielder that is going to be able to, dictate the speed of matches in the Premier League and be that midfielder that United really need in there, because he's a different type of profile of midfielder, I think, anyway, from what would be the optimal fit in that position. But obviously he is your captain. He could have left the club over the course of the summer. He has stayed and he has to play. But he has deficiencies. So what are you going to do? Which player are you going to play next to him? There's news about Sekou Kone now staying, which I thought was quite interesting earlier today. Kobbie Mainoo is in the mix as well. And I think some people have liked what they've seen out of him today. And obviously, I think that midfield fit has to... Look, United have to find a way to make sure that Kobbie Mainoo is that central midfield fit for the longer term, whether he dovetails with Bruno in terms of minutes this season. Can they play together? Probably not. But ideally, look, we might come to this point next summer where Bruno Fernandes is faced with, this opportunity to move to Saudi Arabia after the World Cup next year. Will the answer be different next year? It could potentially come back around again. I don't necessarily think that move is off the table forever just because he hasn't taken it this summer. And then it might be a time where everybody's happy to say, right, let's go our separate ways. And I think it's a short-term fix for me. He's contracted till 2027, 2028 with an option. But, optimally, as United evolve and move forward, especially with the fact that United have signed two number 10s, where does Bruno fit in? He's obviously going to play most of the minutes in that midfield role this season, but I think the jury is out on whether he is the right fit for one of those two roles. And obviously, I think that's a complete fair question to ask. Suvik says here, can Bruno reinvent himself at this stage of his career? I believe in him as much as anyone, but it is difficult with the 2028 timeline. Look, I think completely fair question. I think a lot of people probably do need to ask that question. United need to ask that question as well. And United need to see whether he can actually do that over the course of the next season, at least. But I think Bruno and Casemiro as a pair might be okay for certain matches, but I think if you're looking at energy and ability to get up and down and like making sure the space between the two is right and making sure that United don't get broken on right through the middle of the pitch, can Bruno and Casemiro be the perfect pairing? I don't know. I think the jury's out, and Casemiro's out of contract at the end of this season as well, and United essentially can't get rid of him this year. So look, that is something that's going to need to be addressed. And Ruben Amorim said it himself. I'll just repeat that quote that he says. We have a lack of pace, especially in the middle of the park. And you can feel it's hard to win and bring the ball, but we created chances. We have a lack of pace, especially in the middle of the park. What is he saying there? He's saying, sign me a midfielder, isn't he? I think look, we know that United are in the market for, as has been reported, an athletic, hard-working midfielder. But probably going to need to be, 6'3", 6'4", able to get around the pitch, able to be defensive and break opposition attacking patterns up and this kind of thing, and bring the ball forward and have a good range of passing, this kind of thing. You're probably going to need to see a player like that come in this season, I think. If United can do it, then I'm not sure. I'm not sure how expensive these players are going to be, for example, because there's priorities at striker and midfield. But it's important to recognize that eventually this midfield area will be kind of renovated, I would say. It is. How are United going to go about that in the short term? I don't know. We're not entirely sure yet, but at least Ruben Amorim recognizes it himself. He knows that they've got a lack of pace, especially in the middle of the park. Can Kobe and Manuel Ugarte or can Sekou Kone come through and maybe plug that gap? Remains to be seen. I think United still need a midfielder regardless, because Casemiro's long-term future he doesn't have one past this season, obviously. There'll be certain moments where he is, the best player to use, but maybe that's coming in off the bench if United get in the lead, to protect Leeds or something like that. Maybe he should be that kind of role. But he's going to be leaving at the end of the season. He can't really, for me, be the first choice. So let's see what United can do. Let's see now with Marcus Rashford going, I'll talk about in a second, and other players that need to leave as well. Let's see how big United can go in that position. I know that United have bought Premier League proven a lot of people like Carlos Baleba from Brighton, but at the moment you just look at that and you think, how the hell are United ever going to pull a deal like that off? It looks essentially impossible. But we'll see what they do. Can United go and unearth another player from the French football, for example, isn't exactly massive on money at the moment, and a lot of players that come in from the French league can generally succeed in the Premier League. Can United find a bargain in there who is able to do that job? Can United find a bargain from another league who is able to come in and do that job? I don't know, but obviously Premier League proven players are kind of the mood of the summer, but they do come at a massive premium as well. And if you're going to go and look at potentially signing there's lots to talk about Benjamin Sesko. He's going to cost a lot of money. A midfielder as well of that ilk will cost a hell of a lot of money as well. So look, we'll see what happens. But Amorim at least knows that this is a problem that needs to be fixed. He's also said as well, United go on the US tour next week in the Summer Series, I think it's called. It's really important to go to the US as a chance to bond as a team. I think we need to create that bond between everybody, not just the staff. All the changes are stopping, so we need to live that as a group. And I think what he's talking about there, I think that one of the first reactions I saw on social media to that was, all the changes stopping. Does that mean we're not signing any more players? No, I think he's talking about the changes that were made in the staff last season. Hopefully that's a sign now that all of those cuts are over and that United can start moving forward, which is what we thought would be the case. Just jumping back into the comments, a quick second. Jason says, didn't we pay 60 million for Ugarte to do that? We need a carrot type midfielder, in my opinion. Yes. I mean, look, if there's a lot of things that people get on Ineos for, and I think a lot of them are probably misguided, but in terms of the Ugarte transfer and the muddle up of last summer, not knowing which players to buy for this kind of thing, or which manager to buy for. The Ugarte transfer has not worked yet, but obviously there is a chance as well that look, he can be that midfielder to get around. He's had one season in English football so far. Sometimes it can take players a little bit of time to bed into the speed of the game and the physicality of English football. So maybe you see a better version of Ugarte this season. Maybe United will want to use him. I don't know. Haven't been convinced yet personally. Suvik again says, ironically, after so many years of the 6-10-8 midfield template, we need two in midfield that Fergie's teams had in a 4-4-2 appearing like Keane and Ince. Yeah, look, that would be the dream, right? But we'll see. There's certainly those kind of players and those profiles nowadays come at a massive premium. So Mike Mitchell says, Scott, I don't see the point of buying the midfielder. We have two DMs and Bruno will play every game as CM. Look, there is that argument too. And the thing is, you've added there, the balance of the squad is off. That is a completely fair reason. Like, and as much as, look, I've said there, striker, midfielder, goalkeeper, I'd like to see United sign each of one of those like positions and strengthen in those positions. United have decisions to make and they have to prioritize this year because they don't have unlimited funds. So if they decide this year that they want to go and if they want to go and spend big on a striker, for example, which then might mean that they have to go cheap on a midfielder. I've seen today that Wilfred Ndidi has got a 9 million release clause and United have spoken to Leicester about him. Don't lose your minds or anything like that. But is that a kind of like plug the gap kind of bargain that United can trigger to just get through a season? Look, I don't know. But look, United are well stocked in that area in terms of numbers of players. Mason Mount as well. Where's he going to play? Could he play in that kind of midfield role? I think United are having to work this out a little bit on the fly. I don't doubt that they'll want a central midfielder, but then what do you do with all these other players? You know, you're not, obviously, this summer so far has proven that it's really difficult to sell a lot of these players. So, how do you get that balance of the squad right? It's going to take time. It's going to take time. Jonathan Ball says, I'm really hoping Marcus Rashford makes it, and hello as well, mate. Whether Barca buy him or not, whether Barca buy him then or not, at least in terms, we'll see our players as favourable options rather than toxic assets. I agree. I'll talk about Marcus Rashford in a bit as well. Eric says, great to see you live on YouTube. What goalkeeper do you think works best? Personally, I'm much more in the camp of getting the younger option. As much as I'd like to see, I think Andre Onana needs to be replaced. I've said this numerous times. But at the same time, I would like, knowing the financial situation, this kind of thing, look, if there's an ideal player out there, Diogo Costa would be great, but he's going to cost loads of money. And United probably can't afford to go and spend that on a player like that because they would also be stuck with Onana, a first-team goalkeeper on first-team wages that they can't sell. So maybe that's not the right approach. But there's been a lot of links over the last few days with Lammens from Antwerp, I think he plays for. I think that kind of profile might be the best bet in this instance. Just for me, I think United need to strike a balance between making sure that they get Premier League proven players or high-level proven players, but also they need to make sure over the next few years that they are buying players of that. You know, they're doing it now already with signing teenagers and this kind of thing and putting them in the youth team. But if they can spend that little bit more on Patrick Dorgu age and profile types of players and put them in different positions, they can then grow with the team, then maybe that would probably be the best way to go about it. I think in Lammens' case, it does make sense for me. Like, I've seen he's been highly rated for a little while. And what you would get, if you're not going to like be able to flip Onana and sell him this year, then why not bring in a number two that can really push him and eventually succeed him? And if, let's say that flip does happen and Onana makes a mistake this season, God forbid, or has a bad patch of form, again, touch wood. But maybe then you bring that goalkeeper in. If he takes his chance, then maybe that's the flip. And maybe that is the confirmation to that Andre Onana and to that goalkeeper that you've lost your place as first choice. And we have a completely viable candidate to move forward with who can be our goalkeeper for the next 10 years. That's the kind of goalkeeper I think United should be looking for, personally. Jonathan Ball again says Casemiro is going to cost us. Our fan base's weird hate of our best defensive midfielder in Ugarte because he doesn't pass like Scholes is weird. Fans demanding the unicorn instead of working partnerships. Look, I've just said Ugarte for me has not convinced me yet, but he's only had one season, and it does take players time to succeed. So maybe you do get that kind of growth in Ugarte this season, and he can become that player that United hoped they'd had last year. Mike Mitchell says, I agree, Scott. I just worry about trying to push for Europe while figuring out our best 11. I think we should either use Bruno as a 10 or sell him. Can't see him and Ugarte working. I know, but at the same time, that's the position that United are in. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to pull off the completely revamping their entire team in one window. That's just not what it's going to be. And that's just, you just have to know this is going to take a few seasons and take a few transfer windows in order to get right. So for me, I'm not expecting miracles this season. You need to see improvements. Obviously, United need to get back in Europe, I think. And I do think that over the course of the season, if they do get the signings right and they do kind of plug the gaps and they do make a team that, can score goals and this kind of thing, the lack of European football when 9 teams are playing in Europe might work in United's favor as they get later into the season. We've seen it happen with other teams before as well. And Jonathan says Ugarte is only midfielder that will work with Bruno, in my opinion. Look, we'll see. Obviously, United have played that first game now, and Diego Leon as well, I haven't mentioned yet, but looks like, I don't really want to swear on here, but a brick S house, doesn't he? He's a big lad for 18. Obviously, I think there were some errors that he made today and maybe some deficiencies in his game, but he is obviously 18 years old, has just come in from South America, so you're not going to expect miracles in his first game. And let's see. He's got a chance over the course of preseason word is that he's improved and shown himself off in training as being a really impressive new signing. Let's see if he can carry that forward, and let's see if he can stick in the first team and kind of win a place like he said that he fancies himself to do before he actually landed in England. Let's see what happens. Let's move on. I think that's probably the best option. So keep your comments coming in. If you would like to, talk about Marcus Rashford, I've seen some comments have come in already. That's what I'm going to be doing next. But yeah, subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. If you're new here, please do that. Also, as well, I haven't worked out a specific time yet that I'm going to be going live. If you want to see more lives on YouTube, then please join me and get involved in the comments. I will try and, read out the comments as they come in and do certain sections as well, and do maybe Q&A sections as well. Hit the notification bell if you would like to know when I'm going live. And I think the best time of day probably for me is around this time. So let's see what happens. But certainly over the course of a summer transfer window as well, breaking news and this kind of thing, maybe that might be at different times. Hacker, hello, mate. Rashford completely off the books is a good sign, at least. And yes, I'll talk about this in a second. And Eric says, ESPN reports that Rashford is alone. What have you heard? So obviously we've had this news confirmed today. So this was broken by David Ornstein earlier on. Was it just before the game or during the middle of the game? I think it was just before the game where we got word that this deal was done. And I think, look, for me, and I've said this a few times, United have put this transfer sum on Marcus Rashford of 40 million quid or whatever it is. But since the start of the window and during that Aston Villa loan and even back in January, I think it was very clear that Marcus Rashford wanted to join Barcelona. I think it was very clear that Barcelona wanted to make it happen in January, but they just couldn't because of their financial conditions, the financial situation. But look, when Rashford came back from Villa, it was evident even from his first interview with Aston Villa that he was going to come back and look for a move to a Champions League club, and probably a club of Barcelona's ilk, because he fancied himself, his camp fancied that he'd be able to do that as well. And I just felt like Barcelona was the team that he was holding out for. And we know, even though Barcelona have been putting in bids for Luis Diaz and for Nico Williams, cash money bids, then maybe they're suggesting that they do have the money. And I can understand if there's a little bit of frustration that United aren't selling Marcus Rashford, but at the same time, United aren't really coming at this from a position of strength. They do have one of their highest earning players. Luis Diaz doesn't earn as much as Marcus Rashford does. Nico Williams, at the time before he signed his contract, I'm not sure where it is now, I presume, well, definitely probably didn't earn as much as Marcus Rashford does. And Marcus Rashford is a player that Manchester United just didn't want. So they don't really have that ability to just stand there and stand their ground and say, it's 40 million, you give us the money, or he's staying, because they want him gone. They need him gone because they need money to come in order for them to do more business. So, look, I didn't really think, as soon as Rashford had made it clear that Barcelona was the club that he wanted to join, he even did an interview about it. As soon as he made clear that Barcelona was the club that he wanted to join, and unless Barcelona had moved on, I think this was going to happen regardless. Look, it's a loan. So I was asked just a minute ago what the deal is. It's a loan with an option to buy for around about 35 million euros, I think it is. Obviously, it was 40 million pounds when he joined Aston Villa. But obviously, he'll be by this time next year, he will be a year closer to the end of his contract. So United's, they're getting wages covered, and I'll talk about that in a second. But maybe they don't need to necessarily have as big a fee in their minds as they did in January when they made this loan first. But the important things are here. I don't think there's any kind of upfront fee that comes with the loan, but the word is, as it's been, reported in numerous places by now, that Manchester United aren't paying anything towards Marcus Rashford for the duration of this season. Now that is clear. So that 300k a week or whatever it is that they have been paying Marcus Rashford for the last month or so, because that's what his contract is, they are no longer paying that. So there's a saving. There's not a specific amount of money coming to them in terms of a fee that they can reinvest, but they are saving on, what's that? 1.2, 1.5 million a month or whatever it is. So it is, United can work with that. And I've seen a lot of people ask, how does this benefit United given they're not actually receiving any money for him? It's the best of a bad situation that they're stuck in, for me. I think that is just the way that it is. It's just the way that it is. Subic there says getting Rashford's wages for this year off the books is a huge win. It essentially funds a 60 million signing, as those fees are paid in installments. I don't know what the maths is there, but look, theoretically, getting those wages off does mean that you have that flexibility to go and sign another player, potentially. So the cash position is important as well, and United will need to make sure that, like in Garnacho's case, they're going to need to sell Garnacho wherever he goes, and that will be maybe how they top up the actual bank balance. But they do have the flexibility now to at least go and pursue deals and hope in the meantime that they can get Jadon Sancho off the books, Malacia off the books, Anthony off the books, and this kind of thing, and Garnacho off the books as well, and top up that bank balance so they can go and sign 3 more players over the course of the summer. But look, United aren't coming into this from a position of strength. That's just not the way that it is. So I don't really think we can expect United to go and get the 40 million quid they were holding out for, just because I think it may be a different conversation if Barcelona had moved their priorities and had signed Nico Williams and then decided they didn't need another forward, which I don't think was the case anyway. But if Marcus Rashford's option to go to Barcelona was off the table, then I think the kind of onus and the ability and the strength went back into United's hands. But if Marcus Rashford only wanted Barcelona and Barcelona were working to actually sign Marcus Rashford, I think for me, rather than dragging this out until the end of the window and only getting this deal at the end of the window anyway, it's probably just best that they do it now, that they sort it out, and that everybody just kind of moves on. And United know that they've made that saving, so they have time left to go and reinvest the money that they're saving on other players. Mike says, I'd get Isak on loan. Imagine that. That would be the perfect fit, wouldn't it, really? You see, Newcastle lost 4-0 to Celtic today. After the transfer window that Newcastle have had. Think about all of the kind of meltdowns around Manchester United transfer window, the fact they've only signed 2 first-team players plus Diego Leon. And, people are kind of losing their minds and stuff. I know they finished last season terribly, this kind of thing, but Newcastle have started the new season, missed out on about 4 or 5 top transfer targets. James Trafford is the latest one today, and they've lost 4-0 to Celtic in a friendly. And I think the thing that got me, I just shared this on my social as well, at @_ Saunders. They're actually writing the scoreline out in words, so it was 4-0, just with a picture of Dan Burn. And I was like, really? Like, arty. But it's at your own expense. Look, it could be worse. Just imagine if United had lost out on 5 transfer targets that they were trying to sign and lost 4-0 to Celtic in a friendly, what we'd be talking about today. Look, I'm going back to Marcus Rashford here. Or maybe I'll come to the comments just first. I'll just scroll through and just go back to what I've missed already. Mike again says, happy to see Rashford sorted. Saving 16 million in wages is probably going to cost the first installment of a striker signing, and hopefully Barcelona either sign him or we get a fee. Look, it's important as well. If Marcus Rashford is going to one of the highest profile clubs in the world. He wants to win a place at the World Cup. If he has a half decent season and scores 10, 15 goals or whatever, even if he isn't an automatic starter for Barcelona, his profile is going to raise. It's going to have to go tragically, like terribly, for Marcus Rashford for him to come back in United not be in a stronger selling position next summer. The thing is, for him now, he's got an opportunity to go to Barcelona and win that move. If he doesn't win that move, he has no choice but to seek something else, because he's not going to play at Manchester United unless the manager changes. This kind of thing. But it's make or break for Marcus Rashford now. And look, United are just writing this off, this transfer fee until next summer. Whether Barcelona trigger the fee or not, it's up to Marcus Rashford, really. If they don't, then Rashford's option of going to Barcelona is gone, and he's going to have to find some other place to play football. And at that point, United are going to need, they're going to be a year down the line with the contract, and maybe they can seek a lower fee just to get him off the books then. It becomes more likely that he sold next summer, regardless for me. I think that's just the way that it is. Look, as well, I was going back to the comments, wasn't I? Hacker says, does this put pressure on Garnacho as a big payoff for United? I think yes, in general, United need that one. Maybe Amorim has put that in Garnacho's hands himself by saying you better pray a club comes in for you. Look, the thing with Garnacho's wages as well is United can look, as much as United do need that money, maybe with Garnacho, given he's not earning the kind of Marcus Rashford money that Marcus Rashford is on, maybe they can play that game a little bit more and put it on Garnacho to go and find a permanent move, because they can maybe offer that threat of, hey, you're just going back to the youth team or whatever. It's certainly a lot easier to do it with Garnacho and use that leverage with Garnacho than it is with a player on massive wages and one of the club's highest earners. We'll see. Hacker again says Leverkusen lost I think it was 5-1, losing 5-0 yesterday, wasn't it? Erik ten Hag. Blimey. Niche fan says a loan deal is absolutely, with these terms, a godsend. Quite frankly, there's nothing else we could have hoped for. And look, that's the right kind of way to look at this for me. There's no real other possibility of Marcus Rashford going anywhere else. And you can either play the game of trying to get the money out of Barcelona now, and there's no guarantee that you even get that anyway. There's no guarantee that he does join Barcelona on a permanent deal if you wait 4 weeks or whatever. Chances are, if you do wait those 4 weeks, you're only going to get a loan deal anyway, the closer it gets to the end of the window. So it is probably the best in the circumstances that United could have got. And for me, it's just better to just call it as it is, give him that chance to go and win the move, let him have a pre-season, let him get on with things, and you come back to it next year, and hopefully look, I'll say this as well. I completely want Marcus Rashford to succeed. I would love to see him succeed in La Liga. I want to see him get back on track. I want to see him win a place back in the England squad, this kind of thing. He's working for that. He has a club and an opportunity now that some may argue he doesn't deserve, but nevertheless, he has it. It's the opportunity the players dream of. He's wanted it for a long, long time. He's finally got that chance now. So it's up to him to kind of take that and run with it and win that move permanently. Jonathan says, what I will say is if Marcus doesn't make the most of this amazing opportunity playing for a team that dominates possession in a league where bottom teams are incredibly poor, then he's done. Potentially. Look, I don't want to get into the blame game about Marcus Rashford and this kind of thing. For me, it's just now, let's focus on everybody going their separate ways, everybody looking to United getting on with this season and trying to be better than they were last season, and Marcus Rashford having a new environment to go to Barcelona, play in a league where you'd fancy his chances. For what it's worth, I think he would have done really well in Germany as well if any club had shown interest in him. I'm really surprised Bayern haven't gone in, but maybe you can see why. I don't know, given all the problems that he's had recently. Look, we'll see. But that deal is going to be confirmed in the next few days. Medical, etc., etc. And Marcus Rashford as well. Just a note on this, which I haven't mentioned yet. He is giving up wages to force this move through. So you can see how much he wants it. There's been a lot of talk about whether like Marcus Rashford being kind of obsessed with the like getting as much money as he can out of United, this kind of thing. And Jadon Sancho as well. Obviously, that move to Chelsea kind of fell through. For me, like Marcus Rashford's desire to join Barcelona is kind of summed up in this. He's taken Barcelona were paying him 10 million euros a year gross, which is obviously not net, it's gross. I totted that up, and I think he's on north of 300k a week now at the moment at United or like wherever. I did some quick maths on that. That's 165,000 pounds a week. It's nearly just over half of what he's getting at United. So he's writing off a lot of money. United aren't having to pay that to him. He has a chance now to kind of reinvigorate his career and move forward. And I think let's just kind of leave it at that. I'll be watching, not particularly frequently, I think, but I completely wish that Marcus Rashford has a great time at Barcelona, scores a ton of goals, gets the move permanently to Barcelona. United can have that next summer and everybody can be happy. That's just the best way. That's the best way. I don't think there should be any ill feeling. I know it's not ended the way that everybody would have liked. I know. But at the same time, I think it is just best that everybody moves their own separate ways and everybody wishes each other well. Whether Marcus Rashford will do that, I don't know. But whatever. This is just the way that it is. Look, I'll take some questions just before I go as well. If you'd like to get them in, I will try and do my very best. I'll maybe give it a couple of minutes to run through anything that I haven't discussed already. But yeah, please get your questions in. Mike again says, United fans should want Rashford to do well, even if it's just to sign him permanently. Yes, I agree. It completely works for everyone. Works for everyone. Jonathan says, I do find him taking a big wage cut to play for Barcelona after stinking the place out at United is a bit of a kick in the nuts to fans personally. Yeah, look, potentially, but this is just the way that it is. It's the way that it's worked out. And for me, I don't want to kind of hold that, those grudges. I'm saving that for Di Maria, Alexis Sanchez, those kinds of players, But look, Marcus Rashford has some great times at United, some really great times. And it would be a shame to just kind of throw all those aside just because of how it ended. I think, if anything, Rashford for a little while has probably been needing a different atmosphere and needs to just be happy again. Look, whoever's fault that is, whether it's the player's own fault, his camp's fault, or whether it's Manchester United's fault, it might be everybody's fault. But that's just the way that it is. Suvik says, it helps everyone if Rashford succeeds. Even the reported 35 million euro buy option will give us so much spending power. It would. And Suvik again says, big picture, do you find the Project 150 timeline in 2028 reasonable? Look, do I think it's going to happen? No. Do I think United will win the league in 2028? No. I don't think anybody can say that they will. What I do like about it is and I always come back to this quote that Ed Woodward said on a conference call about Manchester United don't have to be good on the pitch to be successful commercially. That was the messaging within Manchester United since Sir Alex Ferguson departed. That was Ed Woodward's era summed up in a nutshell. The most important thing for him and for them, it wasn't success at the time. It was Man United getting into the Champions League and making a lot of money. That's what it was. And Project 150 is a departure from that. Like, whether you think that Ineos are in bed with the Glazers or whether you think they're an extension of the Glazers, they're not, by the way. People conflate this so incredibly terribly. They're so different. They are trying to fix the errors and mistakes that were made under the Glazers. And you can see now through what I've talked about for the second half of this podcast, giving out crap contracts like that, that's the kind of problems that they're trying to fix. Do I find the Project 150 reasonable? In terms of the aim, look, United should be aiming to win titles. We've not had people in charge of Manchester United aiming to win titles since David Gill and Alex Ferguson. 12 years ago. So do I think it's realistic? No. But things can change very, very fast. Like what I'm saying here is, like, look at Chelsea. I mean, I've been incredibly critical of Chelsea in the way that they've done things. And yes, they are tearing things up at a way more aggressive rate than Manchester United have been. But just like 18 months ago or whatever it was, Chelsea were kind of all over the shop, chopping and changing. They had 40, 50 odd players or whatever it was. And they didn't know who the manager was. And they didn't have like any kind of convincing backing behind the manager that they had and this kind of thing. And things can churn around and things can click quite quickly. And with United being like the spine of the team needs to be addressed, but United do have quality. And if you can like get that first step in the ground, you can qualify for Europe this year and you can show a positive trajectory. There's no reason why United can't be. Look at Arsenal, for example. Remember 2018 when Arsenal had all of those massive contracts of Aubameyang and Ozil and these kinds of players, and they couldn't. They had to take decisions themselves to just actually cancel those contracts at a financial loss. They then built a new club and a new culture and moved forward. And now they finished second for 3 years in a row. Obviously, they haven't won the league or won anything since the FA Cup in 2020 or 2021. But it is possible to make that change. It is possible to kind of cleanse a culture and rebuild your team. The problem that United have is they're still lugged with a lot of bad contracts. If they can get those out, look, Marcus Rashford might end up going. If Sancho goes this year, he'll definitely be gone by 2026. Casemiro will definitely be gone by 2026. That wage structure will change, and maybe that gives United the more flexibility next summer and the summer after that to go and actually spend more money. So things can change. I think it doesn't look likely at the moment, not at all. But like, can United get back up there competing within a year or two? I've seen. They might be permanently damaged. I don't know, but I've seen clubs completely fix themselves if you get the ground rules right. Look at Liverpool. A few years ago and the ownership problems that they have, this kind of thing. Jonathan says, if we've only spent 30 to 35 million on Cunha and Mbumo in installments, does that give us enough to buy a striker without sales? Look, I don't know for sure, but it definitely gives them more flexibility. I think I spoke about this on the pod yesterday. I think somebody commented on the pod that I did yesterday and said that the United's cash position was 74 million. I think I quoted about 90. But it is, at least now it gives United options to go and pursue other targets. Obviously, the sticking point might be how much they actually put down because of their cash position. How much do they actually put down with a new signing? How much cash do they have to drop straight away? Let's take Benjamin Sesko, as Rugby Itch says here. Besides Sesko, what other striker would you look more into? I think it's Sesko and Watkins for me are the two. At least Jonathan, I think they can actually move forward and progress with talks on players and to potentially try and find the right mix and the right structure of a deal to go and get other deals over the line. And then maybe in the meantime, if they do offload players, maybe their ability to kind of pay more upfront changes because they've sold Garnacho or something like that. Yeah, Jonathan says there, at least it shows ambition, something we haven't previously seen under the Glazers. Mike says there, what striker do you like the most, Scott? Seems Amorim wants a runner in behind, which I get why we're linked to Jackson and Keane, even Vardy, but we need the correct profile who also has quality. Look, for me, Moise Keane, not for me, really. Nicholas Jackson, not for me, really. I think I've just mentioned there Watkins and Benjamin Sesko. I spoke about, and maybe I'll dig into this again just now, since I've been asked. I think in terms of the fit now, and if you're not selling Højlund this year, for example, right? If you actually want to persist with Højlund, because some people still think that there's a player in Højlund, and I definitely think there might be the ability for Højlund to kind of become that striker that United need, that can score goals if he gets into the right positions with two good number 10s around him. Look, the jury's out. And like, if United sold him this summer, then I would not have a word to say about it because he's had his chance. But if you're not going to be able to sell him, but you do have some optimism, then maybe an older striker like Ollie Watkins would be the right fit. Jonathan says there, please like the stream. Please like the stream if you've not done so already. I need this to kind of get out to more people. It would really, really be the best thing because this channel's quite small at the moment. But back to Mike's question. Jackson and Keane, I understand, especially with Nicholas Jackson, I understand why United would be looking at him. But for me, paying 50, 60 million quid for a player that Chelsea don't want is not the right way of using your money. If that's going to be 60 million for Garnacho, 60 million for Jackson or whatever it is as a point of convenience, United are still going to be trying to sell Nicholas Jackson for me in a year or two anyway. So let's see. For me, it wouldn't be Jackson. It's between Watkins and Sesko for me. Watkins, ideal fit personally, if you can find the right deal for like 30 to 40 million quid, which I doubt that United will be able to get it that low. If you can find that kind of deal, and he is that answer for 2 years, and then you can maybe sign a younger forward who can succeed him, or maybe Højlund becomes that later on. Maybe that's the right way to go. Probably the best bet overall, and the biggest, highest potential signing that United could make at striker this year is probably Benjamin Sesko. But I think he's the same age as Rasmus Højlund. If you're paying, you're basically doing the Højlund deal again. And that's not me comparing the two players. I'm just saying that in terms of the age and the fact that they're untried in the Premier League or have been untried in the Premier League when they've arrived, and they have that kind of pressure to take on their shoulders. If you're having two 22-year-old strikers trying to compete for the same position, it's not the best in terms of squad dynamics. So if you're going to pay that money for Sesko, again, you're putting yourself in that position of needing that transfer to succeed. I think when I looked at Arsenal looking at Sesko or Gyökeres or something like that, the fact that they had Havertz there, and some Arsenal fans quite like Havertz and the way that he knits the team together and gets goals. If you have that option that you're kind of knits your team together, that brings positive things, and then you can have Sesko as the kind of understudy or the different option in certain matches because he has a more experienced option ahead of him. That is probably the best bet for me. That was the best bet for Arsenal at the time. Obviously, they've chosen to go with Gyökeres for whatever reason. If anything, I thought Arsenal could probably have taken that risk on a younger striker, probably in a better position to take that risk. United, meanwhile, I've just said there, probably a more experienced striking option would be the best bet. But if they're going to go the Sesko route, I haven't got a problem with it specifically. I just think there's a lot more pressure on that move to work. So we'll see. Niche fan with a couple of comments there. I generally want Jamie Vardy at the club. Let's negotiate a cheap signing on fee and 150 a week. Let's see what. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I want that to happen, but you know what you're going to get. I know he's 38, 39 years old or whatever, but I think people would lose their minds at that. I've got to be honest. Niche fan says, brilliant channel. Thanks for doing it. Thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate it. Also, please subscribe if you've not done so already and you're here. Jonathan, and this is another player that personally I like, Samu Omorodion, I think it is from Porto, or Samu Agahawa now, I think he's known as, from Porto, but he'd be a risk. I like Watkins and Mateta or Kolo Muani and a loan with option maybe. I did think of this the other day. United have been trying to sell their players for so long, and they're being met with Barcelona saying we got no money, and Inter saying we got no money, yet they go and sign a striker from Parma and this kind of thing. They do actually have money. Juventus, these other clubs who are looking at taking United's players on loan with option to buy, and they're saying we haven't got any money. This is the only way that we can do it. United don't actually have any money. So let's see if United can go to these other clubs and say, hey, we haven't got any money. Let's take one of your players off the books on loan with an option to buy, because they are lower risk signings. Gonzalo Ramos, maybe. I'm not saying that is something that United should definitely do, but there are players out there that maybe United can take a risk on for a year or two. But I think if you're looking at it, probably United need to get their act together, put some money up, sign the right player, and just that player can score 20 goals or whatever it is. That would be the dream. You get 20 goals like your striker, you get 15 out of Mbeumo and Cunha, and then your problems are fixed, and maybe you win a hell of a lot more matches. But look, I don't know. Hacker says, Mrs. Rooney and Vardy together again. Real Housewives of Manchester who need an all or nothing. Imagine. Mateta as well. There's a lot of shouts for Mateta. Look, maybe like he'd be a good option as well. I think he'll come at an expense though as well. Look, we'll see what United do. There's certainly lots of options out there for United to go and sign. They look in a bit of a better financial position now, so we'll see what they do. But look, I better shoot off now. I think this should actually be okay for you to listen to this on Spotify and Apple as well on audio. I'll do my best to kind of get this edited and uploaded to there. But this has been a YouTube Promised Land podcast live stream. So if you're listening on Spotify and you've got to the end, or Apple, and you've got to the end afterwards, a little bit of a different format from what I usually do, but I do want to try and find a way to double up and make this applicable for both you guys on YouTube and for people who are listening to the podcast as well on the audio platforms. So Niche Fan says, do you seriously think people would be really unhappy with Vardy? Yes. Have you looked at social media? Look, maybe fans who aren't quite as vocal on social media, maybe I'm kind of not getting the right position on that. But signing a 38 or 39-year-old because you broke, probably isn't going to go down best. Because this is Manchester United, and Manchester United would be finished if they did that. Look, I'll see what happens, and I will judge as it happens. I'm not going to say, if they do this, then they are finished, this kind of thing. Jonathan Ball says, everyone like the stream. If you've not done so already, please like the stream, and please tell your friends as well. If you've got friends who are United fans that want maybe a new podcast to listen to or whatever, I would really appreciate the kind of recommendations, this kind of thing. Also, please retweet my kind of promotions of this so I can reach more people if our fans have a meltdown over the kit. Exactly. Yes, they do. Look, thanks everyone. It's been really fun, actually. Been really good to do this, and I appreciate you guys have been in the comments and in the chat as well. If you're watching this later, please get in the comment section. If you're listening later on Spotify and Apple, please get in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this friendly game today. Matheus Cunha, Diego Leon, these kinds of players, the problems in midfield, and Marcus Rashford's loan deal to Barcelona. Let me know. Shriram says, sad to see Marcus leave, Scott. Me too. But unfortunately, not everything is going to be perfect in football. You just have to move on. Things don't always work out. But I have to move on as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Thank you for listening. And please like the stream, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. The link to the YouTube, if you're listening on audio on Spotify and Apple, is in the description to this. If you've been watching on YouTube and have joined me in the comment section, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And this has been fun. Maybe I'll do another one in the few days to come. Really, really appreciate it, guys. And look, have a fantastic weekend. Let's see what happens. Let's see if any kind of further developments on transfers come around. And let's wait for Brian Mbumo to be announced as a United player in the next few days. Until next time, everyone, thank you very much. Thanks to Rugby Itch. Thanks to Hacker. Thanks to everybody who's been joining me for this one. See you next time, everyone, for another Promised Land podcast, maybe in live format. See you soon.